You are now tuned in to Melanin Confidential.
In case you missed it, check out some clips from our last episode.
And I feel like at the end of the day, it's up to us as a community just to educate ourselves a little bit more, which I am happy that we are moving towards that in the standard of beauty and how we view ourselves as a community, as women of color, men of color.
Like, black is black is black is black. And we need to pay closer attention, not using colorism as a crutch and not identifying ourselves and stereotyping ourselves.
Because we have so much to say what other outside races have to say about our community, but I mean, if we're not together as a community, a black community ourselves, how can we expect people to respect us if we don't respect ourselves?
Exactly.
We talked about so much, but this particular topic is so broad, so it's like we kind of got to do a part two, you know?
Part two
we got to do a part two.
So now that you're all caught up, let's get into it.
S.E.X, S-E.X, y'all. Come on, we're going to get into this. Since we talking about the standard of beauty and sexuality, porn. Let me tell y'all, as being the single one in the group, it is a very interesting conversation that you possibly have with these men out here. I feel like the perception is just based off of conversations that sometimes guys feel like, or just, I don't even want to limit it to guys, but maybe people just feel like that's the way it should be all the time. And I feel like that's unrealistic.
It is. It's a production at the end of the day. They have multiple takes. It is not real, people. It is their job.
Yeah.
I definitely feel like it's unrealistic as well. I mean, just coming from a different standpoint, like, it can actually be harmful to your relationship. You know, some people become very dependent on pornography to get them aroused, or, you know, they got to watch it to get in the mood and things like that. And that could be detrimental to your relationship.
It can pervert your sexual relationships,
absolutely.
honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like at the end of the day, you know, if you do watch it, that's your business. Right. But know how to separate the, I guess, the expectations of it being reality versus what is considered to be a show. At the end of the day, I don't think
people can separate it. I think that's the issue.
And I know for me personally, like, this has been, like I said before, conversations that I've had, and I just feel like, If a woman can't perform to that level, or a man can't perform to that level, like, I feel like that may do something to their confidence and how they feel about their sexuality and questioning themselves as a sexual being. So it's like, yeah, I mean, I think it's cool to do tricks and all this other stuff in the bedroom, but know that, and to each his own, it may not be like that every single time you have intercourse with somebody.
Right.
So.
I feel also like pornography makes you start to, like, even subconsciously compare sexual partners.
Yes.
Like, say one chick that you're dealing with is, like, maybe a little bit more experienced, or, you know, she got tricks, you know what I'm saying? And then you deal with the next relationship or the next person, and, you know, she's a little bit more demure about her, you know, sexual, you know, expression. And then it's just like, once again, you're making her feel insecure or uncomfortable because you're literally comparing two different people based on some fantasy that you saw online.
Yeah.
Keyword, fantasy.
Yes, for sure. I'm like, you know, kind of iffy about this next thing, but do y'all feel like it should be available to the public as available as it is, you know?
No. And I'm saying no because it's meant for a certain age. Because it's so easy to access, because it's free. Obviously, there's some sites that are paid out there, but you have little kids that are watching this, looking it up, and that's their first image and view of sex or even knowledge about it. So they carry that, you can carry that with you into your adult life and think that's what sex is, when it's not.
For sure. You can definitely carry that into the standard of beauty and what you feel sexuality should look like, should feel like. So I definitely agree with that, Chelsea. I feel like It's kind of crazy kind of getting into this, but growing up, sexuality for me, and even just talking about sex and like how you said children have access to it. When I was growing up, man, that word was not brought up in my household. I never had conversations about it at all. You know, it was kind of like, don't do it, that's it, boom, moving on to the next thing. I could tell if you've been doing it. I can smell if you've been doing it.
I can see it in your eyes.
Yeah, I can see it in your body, the way that you know what I mean? So I just feel like I agree with you that there probably should be conversations with parents nowadays about porn if it is brought up, and if your child does bring it to the table. I know that's something that I would do, just to explain the difference between what is real and what isn't. What do you think, V?
Yeah, definitely. I agree with both of you ladies. I certainly feel like pornography should be filtered, or at least be a little bit more constrained to the public. Not even just from the standpoint of like young kids like teaching themselves or like going on these sites and being confused about what sexuality is, but also I feel like that intensifies like acts of sex trafficking and prostitution.
It does.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's scary. I mean, some of these videos that get posted on these pornography sites, like, you don't even know if these are willing participants. You know, the stuff that they even have out there for people to have access to me is really bothersome.
It's perverted.
And I feel, it's very perverted. And I think that's the thing that I don't like about, in terms of like how public some of these categories are. Like, it's a distaste for me, for sure.
Yeah, it's scary. Some of it is scary.
Yeah, and I will say, as far as like my story, you know, first experience in pornography, like, I also grew up in a household where we didn't really talk about stuff like that. My mom was very protective, as she should be. She's raising girls, so I totally get it. But you know, I remember going to school and people talking about stuff like I didn't know nothing about, like, even like the little lingo and, oh yeah, I saw she did this and put this there, and I'm like, hold on, what's going on here? So I think my curiosity got to me, and I was like, well, ain't nobody really telling me nothing, but I keep hearing things about, you know, this particular topic, and I don't know. So I ended up getting on the World Wide Web, of course, and doing my own little research, and then my mom found out. It was like looking at the web browser, like, what are you doing?
I don't know, that's crazy.
Yeah, I had a similar experience to you, V. But I would have to say, like, my parents, or my mom especially, was very open. We had conversations, you know, the good touch, bad touch, what sex was, you know, definitely want you to wait until marriage, when you're in love. But I was really introduced to it, like, in elementary school, watching Ricky Lake. I had no business watching Ricky Lake after school anyway. Ricky. But that's so funny. Like, the show topic was pornography. And my parents were really big on, if you don't know what it means, look it up. Of course, my mother did not mean look that up. So I looked on AOL, and oh my God, opened up Pandora's box. And yeah, same. She found it in the search history and tore my butt up, to be honest.
Like, what was y'all's first reaction when y'all saw porn? Like,
well, I'm not even gonna flex, y'all. I'm gonna keep it all the way 100. I didn't really see porn until I got into college, and I was just like,
clap to that.
I was like, wow. Like, you know what I'm saying? Because I was scared that my mom was going to find out anything. So I was like, yo, I'm not looking at nothing, you know. I just went based off of what people said in high school. And I was just like, all right. But then, you know, when you get to college, you kind of start dabbling a little bit in the sexuality and trying to understand it better for yourself. So, yeah, when I first saw it, I was like, wow, this is like really interesting, if I can say the least.
Yeah, I think I was in shock because I was so young and I didn't really know what it was anyway, and it was just a lot going on. But after that, like, because it scared me so bad, and so did my mom, that I didn't really start, you know,
the fear of God.
Yes. Woo, child. But yeah, I didn't start really or watch it again until, like, you know, college. And then it was like out of interest because I, you know, started having sex myself. Yeah.
So what did you feel like when you first saw it in college versus when you saw it as a child?
I didn't understand or know what was going on when I was a child. And then in college, it was like, all right, okay, this is interesting. Is it yeah, like, is this what it's supposed to be like? Turns head? Yeah. Like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that's part of me thought like, okay, this is what guys want,
Exactly.
Just being real.
Yep. I was, when I first had sex, and I was definitely a late bloomer in that department. It wasn't until I was like almost 20 years old.
Yeah.
But I will say that it was explorative for me. Like, I was trying to figure out like, oh, what do guys like? Or what, you know what I'm saying? Like, what are they interested in? It was just me trying to understand my, sexual side and, curious about certain acts that people were talking about and things of that nature. So going off of what Shay was mentioning earlier about, sexual expression, what do you guys feel about that on the flip side? Obviously we talked about pornography, but how do you feel about like the overall idea of sexual revolution? Like, do you feel like there is an overexpression in our society, in our culture? Do you feel like there's overexposure in terms of, women saying they're embracing their bodies?
So here's my take on that. And I'm going to be real explicit, so excuse my language a little bit. I just feel like people been hoeing since the beginning of time. But in the context of that word, it's like how much of it we were exposed to. So I feel like now you see a lot more of it, the sexual evolution of everything, because we have the internet. There's, so much accessibility to that. But then if we go all the way back to the Bible, there was Jezebels back there. Yeah. So, I think it just, the evolution of it to me is like, is there really an evolution? No, but I think people have always been the way that they were, whether it's embracing their bodies, exploring different sexualities, those different things. But I think it's more so on a level of the exposure. Is there an evolution of how much exposure we have to it? Yes.
Yeah, I would have to say definitely. I think we live in an over-sexualized world right now. It's sex everywhere. All the advertising that you see, you always hear sex sells. Whether it's a burger commercial or a lingerie commercial, like sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. It's just, it's literally, it's everywhere. It's in your face, whether you want it to be or not.
Right. And I think that's kind of where I draw the line too. I feel like it's been around forever. Like, this is not like an overall new concept. I just feel like people are less candid about those things.
Yeah.
And that seems to be kind of problematic.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even say, like, I know you said hoeing around, Shay. I wouldn't go as strong as to say that, but, people have been having sex for a long time, basically, I think was the point that you were trying to get around. It's kind of funny.
I don't know. I mean, I guess I should clean it up a little bit about the hoeing. And I'm not saying if you out here and that's how you live in your life, that's your preference. That was a little jokey joke. Y'all got to have a little sense of humor listening to us. I just think at the end of the day, it's been going on forever. And whatever you classify that is, whether you feel, because people have their own description of what they think it is. Some people think, okay, if you out here being naked on the gram, then you're a hoe. Then some people are like, classify hoeing as, or that level of sexuality is, well, if you sleep with this many people, then that classifies you to be this and that. And we won't even get into the double standard of that. That'll be something saved for another
day. For real.
But I think overall, my point was, again, just to say that I feel like it's been around forever. And so we're just being more exposed to it, of course, because we can see everything now.
Right.
Yeah.
And just to also shift the tone on that, obviously with the revolution of sex or people being more expressive comes, people being blamed for their abuse. Oh, she was asking for it, or she looked at me.
She had on a little dress.
Had that dress on, or I could tell she wasn't wearing panties. Like, what is up with that?
It's uncalled for. Yeah. I don't care if a girl literally just has on a little mini skirt, no panties, and a bralette and is out in the club. That doesn't mean that you have the rights to slap her butt walking out the club or to call her any type of name. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, even if you don't classify her as looking like a lady, she is still a lady and she deserves to be treated with respect.
Right. Yeah. I think, so I'm going to play devil's advocate here. So I hear you on that, and I definitely agree, but I also feel like I'm a big, firm believer in preventative measures.
Yes,
And so I'm like, let me not put myself in a situation to where that could even occur.
That's true.
Now, that same scenario could occur with somebody that's fully clothed.
Yeah. It does happen.
Yeah, it does. But I do feel like preventative measures should be taken, only because sometimes we can't always be accountable for other people's actions, but what we can do is try to just be accountable for ours and control what we can control at the end of the day.
Then just shifting gears as well. And our parents were a little bit strict in terms of having the talk, so to speak, with us. Do you feel like the protection of the talk or kind of being a late bloomer helped in terms of harm reduction from a sexual standpoint?
Well, my mom was a little different from you all's mom. I appreciate the fact that she wanted to have the conversation with me, and she was very much so answered my question and was very forthcoming and everything like that. I would just say personally for myself, I know I want to have that conversation with my kids very early on. I want them to learn about sex from me, from my husband and future husband and I. And I want to teach them that it is a beautiful thing. It's a powerful thing when it's in the right covenant. And I want to teach them the physical aspect of it, the good, bad, the ugly, as well as the emotional part too. And I think that's something that's missed in a lot of households, explaining the reason why. Soul ties are real out here.
Don't I know?
And as bad as, obviously STDs, all that stuff can be spread. But we have to also do better about talking about the emotional ties that come along with it, the heartbreak. You're literally giving a piece of yourself to somebody. I don't care what you have to say, whether you like to express yourself sexually or not. You're giving yourself away, a piece away to that person. You're sharing your body.
Yeah, I would say for me, the protection from sex and avoiding like the talk, I think honestly, if I'm being real, I think it was very harmful from my experience and growing into adulthood. Like kind of like V, like I didn't lose my virginity till I was 21 years old, and I felt like for that reason alone, I think I experienced a lot of things that I probably shouldn't have had I had known the repercussions behind having sex. Not obviously, like Chelsea said, not necessarily the obvious with that, but the emotional standpoint of it all. And one of the things that really resonates with me as we talk about this is a sermon that I listened to from Pastor Michael Todd. If y'all haven't listened to his relationship goals series, you should definitely take a look at that.
Fire.
It's on YouTube.
It is fire.
But he had a whole sermon on sex, and he talked about the covenant of God and the pretense of which it should be held under, and just having sex. And when I listened to that and I thought about it, it really changed my whole perspective. Pretty much when you're having sex with people, it is, like you said, it's a soul tie. And then it's also like you're marrying them just without the whole ceremony and papers. So when I thought about it, he broke it down. And when I thought about that, I was like, damn, like I never really thought about it that way. And I don't want to say it made me feel bad. It just changed my perspective. And I just really wish that like my parents personally, and I'm not knocking my parents, I feel like they did the best job and was able to do the best that they could do in terms of that. And maybe their idea of not talking about it, like you said, V, was more of a protection. But I just would have liked to been exposed to it. So that way some of these jokers out here wouldn't have even gotten a chance. You know,
when they got a taste of that shit, your mind.
So I'm just like, had I known that, I think I would have been a little better off.
And I think that brings my point up of just like introducing the overall concept over time. You don't got to drop a bomb on your kid. There's a way to go about introducing the overall idea or concept without keeping them in the dark for so many years. And like you said, just avoiding, the things that you wish you could have avoided had you known a little bit better.
Exactly.
So I feel like I would definitely start to introduce the concept slowly. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just dropping little ideas and hints, maybe explaining things, if mommy and daddy are in the room and they hear things, stuff like that. Just to kind of open up the idea of having the conversation. That way, when the real talk happens and y'all get to the nitty gritty, the birds and the bees, it's not such an uncomfortable thing for the parent or the child.
Exactly. And even honestly, like, just talking about the whole sexuality and sex period, I feel like even just down to kissing, like, and understanding the levels to that and what that means. I mean, some people feel like, okay, I could just kiss anybody and it's fine.
Right.
But I feel like even just understanding that more so in an intimate setting, not like, oh, mom, have a good day, give me a kiss type of thing, but it's like in an intimate setting, like, what does that mean? What can this lead to? You know, those different things, and opening up and having that conversation. I think that's something I'm definitely going to implement with my children, because girl, kids be out here on the playground kissing at 5 years old, talking about they got a little boyfriend. Little girlfriend. So
And I think just overall, in terms of like emotional triggers, we as a society need to be more careful, not just when we introduce the concept, but how we introduce the concept. You know, my mom and dad broke up when I was like 2 years old. And I just think it's really important that we still talk about sex and relationships in a beautiful way, instead of implementing those emotions or putting those emotions on children. You know what I'm saying? So there are negative aspects when you flip that coin.
for sure.
People internalize it. Like, you internalize those sayings.
You don't even know. It's like subconscious. You know, you think that like, oh, it's just something I heard as a kid, and you start to realize you're kind of implementing some of those habits in your relationship or your daily life. And then you have to sit back and be like, dang, when you become more self-aware, like, wow, I can't believe I was using that as a crutch to define, you know, my sexuality.
Yeah, for sure. I would definitely agree with you on that, V. The emotional triggers is definitely like a big thing. And even just when it comes to sexuality, and this might be a little deep, but people who have experienced that emotional abuse or have went through that with like family members and rape and different things like that, and being touched a certain way, like that all falls into sexuality and how you view it. So just being cognizant of that, like, not saying when you have those conversations with your children, which I think is true, like you said, Chelsea, your mom teaching you what's a good touch and bad touch and stuff like that. But also, even when we go into adulthood, you know, some people, their childhood traumas, if they have been in that situation before, may roll over into their sex life. So there may be certain things to where
they think it's normal.
And that's not okay.
Right. Even like your partners, like being just more mindful, having discussions about what your sex life looks like.
And speaking of partners, what do you all think about monogamy and celibacy? Pause. Everybody got a little quiet.
I think my view when it comes to monogamy and celibacy, I would say, I think it depends on the person. Let me say that. Because I think it depends on the person. It depends on your reasoning behind it. It depends on your faith. Like that question, there's so many different layers to it. You know, I think the older that I get, the more, and I've always kind of been like this, like if I'm giving myself to someone in that way, it's not for fun and games, kicks and giggles. Like I've never been the type of chick to just have casual sex. Like, that's never been me from jump. So I just feel like the older that I get and the more I start to understand and do my own research and come into my own sexuality and understanding what sex means to me, it kind of makes me lean towards possibly looking at celibacy, because I'm like, you know what? Like, understanding and walking more in my faith, I could see why people choose this path, you know, if they want to be closer to God, or understanding why or what that act truly means when you're doing it. So I could definitely see that.
You know, I would say in terms of monogamy and celibacy, I agree with Shay. I definitely feel like it should not be something, you know, sex should not be something that's so casual. I feel like monogamy is almost a lost art form to a degree. Like polygamy is becoming such a huge trend. And, you know, the idea of casual dating and having multiple partners seems to be just like a regular thing. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like there needs to be some exclusivity or some sort of commentary with your partner in terms of what those expectations look like. Definitely. I feel like the level of communication when it comes to sex is something that we forget to cover in the beginning sometimes. You know, people just do it like Nike. You know what I'm saying? But you really need to, you know, have those talks.
For obvious reasons, too.
Okay. Definitely for obvious reasons. Even like, you know, the idea of celibacy as well, to what Shay was saying, I agree with you know, maybe that is for you. I'm not saying it's something that you absolutely have to do, but I think important aspects come out of practicing something like that. And I think those important aspects are understanding that there are more layers to the idea of sex than just the act. Yeah, it's a connection that's so much deeper than we really actually realize. And so I just think that, you know, it's important for you to establish, you know, what you want out of your sex life and your relationship.
Yeah, and I was one with my fiance. We're practicing celibacy or purity, since it's more so faith-based. But I was very upfront from the very beginning. And before, when you think about it, it's kind of odd because sometimes you're able to have sex, but you can't really discuss it with your partner.
Yeah.
And it's kind of backwards when you think about that, because how are you able to open up your body physically to somebody, but you can't communicate the things that you want?
That part,
Like,
friend,
that's
it's
crazy
hard.
to me. But I've evolved with my sex life and, you know, practicing celibacy. And it's so much more than just faith-based for me now, because it's just like you were saying, V, there's so many practical things that come from it as well too. Like you learn to really truly get to know your person for who they are, your significant other for who they are.
Right.
You learn to be intimate in other ways. Your communication grows. And then the self-discipline that you learn, if you have that self-discipline, because it's hard, especially if you've been there, did that, and you're used to showcasing love that way in your relationship, you have to change your entire mindset and really retrain your mind, retrain your body, retrain your triggers that you have, give yourself a heart check every now and then. But I think it also helps you in other areas of your life. Like I was saying, that self-discipline, because if you're able to overcome your flesh in that way, it can carry over into self-discipline with your finances, self-discipline with like just so many things, you know, trying to go after and get that job that you want. So taming that flesh, it's a beast, but once you do, it's a beautiful thing. And just because we are practicing celibacy doesn't mean that, you know, I don't think that sex is I don't think sex is a disgusting thing. I don't preach that or anything like that. I think it's beautiful, but in the right covenants, having been there, did that, I noticed more of a difference in myself.
Oh, wow. That is amazing.
So yeah, we can't wait to hear the Pew Side chats too.
Giving us more insight on that. 'Cause, girl, I feel like, you know, you preaching to me right now.
I know.
Check my IG to learn more.
Yes,
Have to throw that in there, you know? But what do you guys think about what men think about sex? Just the whole partners, exclusivity, like we were talking about earlier. When should we give up the goods, you know?
So it's crazy because, you know, I've been like just dabbling a little bit, put my little toe out there in the little dating world just a little bit. And, you know, you'll have these conversations with people and like I've literally asked like, oh, you know, how do you feel about celibacy? Oh, nah, dog, I can't do that. You know, oh, nah, you know, no sex at all, you know, and it's just kind of like, well, like seriously, what are your thoughts on that? Why do you feel like you can't do it? You know? And so I think honestly, I just think that guys say that, but then I feel like, is it a cop out almost? Because it's like you said, you don't have the self-discipline enough to just be like, okay, this is not what I want to do.
It's an ego thing too. It's a prideful thing because you gotta, it's hard for both men and female. But I feel like, just speaking from like hearing my fiance Derek, you know, men, like growing up, your pride, your ego is attached to your sexuality. It is at the end of the day. And you know, men try and say, oh, you know, you're feminine if you're not having sex, or what you got. No, I mean, do you like girls? You know? So it's like when you grow up hearing that, you start to intertwine the two. And so they feel like they have, in order to be a man, they have to show it with how they have sex, who they're having sex with, when they're having sex, or frequency and all that type of stuff.
Or even just to spin it off where you said, in order to show how to be a man, I feel like maybe it's also tied to in order to show your level of affection for that particular woman. If that's how they only know, that's the only way they know how to show love, then it's just like that's what they feel like they need to do. But as you said, there are other ways that you can do that.
And I mean, scientifically, men think less emotionally as well.
They're physical beings.
Yeah, they're extremely physical. So I don't feel like that's an excuse, men. So the y'all men listening, I'm not on y'all side necessarily, but what I'm saying is I feel like you guys just have to be a little bit more self-aware and conscious of that because you're more physical. You know what I'm saying? It's okay to tap into your emotions. It's okay to set boundaries or be communicative in the beginning, because there's nothing worse than wasting a woman's time or vice versa when the expectation from the get-go is purely sexual or that's high on the priority list.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I think it's important to have conversations of like, okay, what are your priorities? Like nip that in the bud immediately.
From the beginning.
Yes.
Yeah, because then from there you can figure out if you need to proceed dating that person or not. Because like I said, I was from the very beginning like, look, let me tell you, you're not getting my goodies. So are you cool with that or not? And it's not like I'm not trying to be hard to get. Like, this is my life.
I'm letting you know right now, sir.
Yeah,
Exactly.
But so then that brings me to the question for people who aren't necessarily practicing celibacy. Like, what do y'all feel like is too soon? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I've had conversations with people with this where they're like, you know what, women or, you know, people in general try to put a label on and say like, well, I'm gonna wait 3 months or I'm gonna wait 6 months.
Oh,
and
Lord.
like literally I had a conversation with a guy the other day and he was telling me, you know, it's crazy because he was like, I've known people who have waited 3 months to have sex and then those people aren't together, or people who had sex the first night and they ended up getting married and they're still married and been married for 30 years. Yeah. You know, so what are y'all's views on that?
I mean, going back to my days, you know, but I don't know. I really feel like I couldn't put a label on it. I feel like for me, I expressed it if we had a connection. So I can't really say like, oh, 3 months in, I mean, I wasn't one to have sex right off. If I'm being honest, speaking on myself, I wasn't one to have sex with you right off the back. I may have wanted to, but you know, I tried to refrain. Sometimes I feel like men think if you have sex quickly with them, they're thinking like, if she did this with me, then what was she doing with all these other guys? I feel like it can be so like that
double
question.
standard.
Yes, it's double standards. It's so judgmental.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't know, there's so much that goes into that question.
Definitely. I mean, I would just say the same night is too soon. No, I'm just kidding. Of course, that's the case. But I would definitely say that you need to be asking yourself questions. And if those questions, the answers you have to those questions aren't something that's comfortable, that you're willing to share, then it might be something that you might consider too soon. One, can I trust this person? If I feel like I cannot trust this person, it's an automatic no.
Why are you going to give your body to somebody that you don't trust, that you don't know anything about?
Secondly,
that's just my thoughts.
Would I be embarrassed by sharing this information with a friend or a loved one?
Yes.
Am I
air clapping
hiding?
over here, y'all.
Yes. Am I hiding the fact that this is what I'm doing? And if you answer those two questions, in my opinion, and they're both, you know, negative answers, then sis, you might want to slow your roll.
Yeah.
That's all.
I feel like the whole too soon, since I asked the question, I'm going to answer it myself. I feel like the whole too soon thing is very subjective.
It is.
I also feel like I'm not judging anybody if they are having sex on the first interaction. Like, that is on you. Or if you're waiting longer, like you guys said, I think it's based off of, one, sexual chemistry in general. If you are going to be out there having sex. Two, like you said, do you feel like you can trust that person? And three, I also feel like their level of respect that man or that woman may have for you is a big part.
Yeah.
You know, there's nothing worse than feeling like you have to be pressured into something.
Exactly.
That should be a no from the jump.
Yeah, you know,
feel like
what
you're
I'm
doing
saying?
it for somebody else.
Yeah, or like guys will make you feel. I feel like, in my honest opinion, the guys that end up getting it the most are the ones that's not even sweating it. Period. Yeah. So, you know, that's how I feel about that.
And I guess to wrap, I mean, today's episode, it was really juicy. We could probably go on and on and on. But I think, honestly, at the end of the day, we each are doing what's best for us.
Yeah. And understanding that there's power in sex. It's not just about the act itself. And just being, you know, open, allowing, you know, people who do have children and are raising, you know, Black boys and girls out there, like just starting to drop little gems. Like, don't culture shock your kids.
Yeah. Don't let them find out from somebody else.
Oh,
Exactly.
yeah, especially that.
And I'm gonna just say this and leave it at this. It's gonna be a mic drop. All right, Punani, it rules the world. No, I'm playing. But again, like, just a level of accountability in whatever it is that you do, and just feeling confident in your sexuality. If you are the guy or girl that is comfortable in expressing it in that way, that is completely fine. Nobody is judging you. If you are the guy or girl that you want to be a little bit more exclusive in your sex life, there's nothing wrong with that as well. So I think, like you guys said, just finding what works for you.
Well, this was a good
It was.
episode.
It was.
Yes. Y'all will have to let us know what you think.
For sure.
So make sure you are following our Instagram at melanin_confidential.
Yeah.
For sure. And one time for the individual platforms. One more time, good people, till they get to know us.
So this is Chelsea. You can follow your budget-friendly travel queen at Chels_Janae, CHELS_Janae.
Nice. And this is your girl V. You can follow me at Frugal Fashion Collective for all the thrifty finds.
And last but not least, this is your girl, Shay Jovan. You can follow me at Shay Jovan. And anything thrifting or vintage, 80s, 90s, I need to come up with a little catchphrase like you guys. I'm going to work on it, y'all, for the next episode. I'm going to have something, but that's where you can find me.
Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in to our first episode. We can't wait to hear your feedback and give you some more content. Until next time, we are over and out.
Much love.
Bye.